And eventually, the community just began this downward spiral, and the people with the better education and the better jobs, they said it's time for us to leave. And that began a further economic segregation. But what happened downtown, before we open up for questions? What happened out downtown was a classic case of gentrification, but this gentrification was for economic purposes, right? Very often neighborhoods were gentrified. What does that mean? You declared slum and blighted. You justify moving all the people, the indigenous people, out, and then you bring in developers to redevelop higher income housing, and you bring in a higher income group of people, socioeconomic. This is happening all over the country. And that's why we are segregated now almost in America as we've ever been. Now it's more of a segregation along socioeconomic lines. But poor blacks are segregated almost as they've ever been because they're limited and restricted where they can live because where low-income housing is constructed and where Section 8 subsidized housing vouchers are made available. Are you following me? And that's the West Side. So the triangle, it increased, it accelerated the decline of the West Side. And then lastly, in the 1980s, crack cocaine distribution in the state of West Virginia, the epicenter, became the west side of Charleston. Drug dealers from Haiti, New York, Detroit, Columbus, major urban places, they came here because guns were so easily available and could be purchased because we had some of those lenient gun laws in the country, and they came here to buy weapons to take them back to these big cities and make a large profit, and they came here because the rule of supply and demand, the law of supply and demand. There was a demand for crack cocaine, the supply wasn't here, and so they came in and they took over the neighborhood, took it over, controlled the public housing places. It was the most dangerous place in the world that you could be at that time. And since that time, we have funeralized more young black people, used to be primarily males, than we've done for funerals. Now it's began the black females getting caught up in this some kind of way. So that's kind of where the West Side is right now. And so the last thing I will say, I think I got about 10 more minutes, 7 more minutes, is that the benign neglect is what's been so frustrating. It's been so, it's beyond frustrating. It's exasperating, right? It's depressing that for many years that many of us have been engaged in trying to move something forward, the Charleston Urban Renewal Authority, even though they declared a 256-acre plot, and we're going to walk some of that today, they declared it to be slum and blighted and needed redevelopment in 2008, that the conditions compromised the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents, yet they have refused to move their own plan forward. And the city of Charleston have allowed them to be in violation of the 1952 Urban Renewal Law. When they, at our request, sent their plans to the Western University Law Clinic, and the lawyers there ruled that that plan, in all likelihood, that the court would rule it in non-compliance with the 1952 Urban Renewal Law. So that's the challenges that this community currently faces. We have some of the lowest performing students at the elementary school level in the state of West Virginia. And we have 2 state-of-the-art elementary schools in terms of the buildings. We have some of the lowest performing school kids at the middle school level. We have some of the highest rates of juvenile delinquency, a high rate of kids being expelled from school. And I could go on and on, item infinitum ad nauseum. So those are the challenges facing the West Side. And for many years, there's just been denial. People have denied that these conditions exist. They denied the impact that urban renewal in the 60s and 70s had on this community and other heavily populated black communities. So lastly, to what you guys are doing, part of this West Side has the 27th lowest life expectancy in the United States of America, according to the Center for Disease Control and those who collect their data. One of the highest infant mortality rate deaths. That's what we're dealing with right here, and we're within less than 7 minute drive from the state capitol. And we live in the shadow of the economic epicenter of the state of West Virginia. And if we were to be emancipated from the city of Charleston, we'd be the 10th largest city in the state of West Virginia with 17,000 residents. About the size, population rise to that of Fairmont and Beckley. I got about 10 more minutes. I'm open the floor for any questions you might have, something we can elucidate on, or something you could teach me. Anybody?
Yeah.
I can't see that far back. Yes?
I'm wondering what your opinion is on the new Elk City that they've kind of deemed on the edge of the west side on Washington Street. Do you think it's going to spark more businesses moving down Washington Street towards like Patrick Street, or what's your opinion on it? Do you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing. It was a bit painful and discouraging about how it came about, because they had no contact and no conversation with those of us who live and are trying to develop the lower west side. And they did it to sever themselves from the west side, because they didn't want to be called West Side. They want to be called Elk City. But having said, I do think it's a good thing. Anything that brings economic viability, to bring businesses. But I bet you there's not a handful of black people that go over there.
Do you think that since it is bringing more business, more of an economy to the west side, that it can end up displacing people who were originally here? I know there's not necessarily housing right there, but if it works its way, you know what I mean?
No, you're making an excellent point. Here's what my investigation has showed me. Most of the people that operate businesses on the west side, they don't live here. They have a business here, but they don't live here. And I call it the greatest economic transfer center in the state of West Virginia, is the west side of Charleston. $365 million transferred through the west side of Charleston every year. And most of the businesses, they don't live here. And except their business, they don't invest in anything else here. And they have no intention of moving over here. So I don't think it's going to displace any people. But I do think it's good. I think anytime commerce comes in, that is a good thing. What we're trying to do is to develop, see more businesses develop that's owned by the people that live here, that have a vested interest to being here, and that actually want to see the neighborhood develop and the people develop. But I'm not critical of Elk City, even though it's hard for me to swallow when they was having these secret meetings to develop the concept and brand it, and would not include the whole community in that conversation. But they're doing some good things over there, and I salute them.
So then how can we incentivize people who have lived here for all their life, or black families to come in and own businesses on the west side? How can we?
I think right now, you're from the west side,
Yeah.
you're Olivia. Right now, I'm gonna send you some things. Pay attention, encourage your parents to take. Right now, one time in history, an opportunity to do something. The city of Charleston got $36 to $38 million through the Federal Recovery Act, American Recovery Act. Mayor Amy Schuler Goodwin has allocated $8 million of that is going to go toward supporting small businesses and trying to get some business to get established. And we just need advocates and people who are concerned to advocate to say we need to make sure that smaller businesses, African American women-owned businesses, are fairly treated in the distribution of these funds. The Kanawha County Commission, they got another $36 million. And I tell the commissioners often, the west side of Charleston, we're not in eastern Kentucky, right? We are in Kanawha County, even though they say since y'all in the city of Charleston, then Charleston should take care of you. But we believe that some of the money from the Kanawha County Commission should also be allocated to the west side because it's a distressed area. That's what could happen, and that's going to happen over the next couple of months. Commitments going to be made about that money. The few of the things I'd like for you to be aware of, some major initiatives that's taking place with the Wild, Wonderful, Healthy Charleston West Side Project, the McGee Foundation, another foundation that's targeting the west side. There's a meeting this evening at 4 o'clock where they're going to be discussing that. So all eyes, a lot of eyes on the west side right now. The question will be whether the African-American nonprofits, African-American businesses, will they be treated fairly? And will they have equitable opportunity in some of these resources? I got 5 more minutes.